In 2014, the sequel to How to Train Your Dragon officially released in theaters. How to Train Your Dragon 2 is directed by Dean DeBlois and is starring Jay Baruchel, America Ferrera, as well as Gerard Butler and Cate Blanchett. This story is about how Hiccup and Toothless discover a ice cave home to hundreds of dragons and a mysterious dragon rider, and they find themselves in the middle of an epic battle to protect the peace. So we're going to talk about this movie and if you, as a Christian, should watch it right now. Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm your host Tim, and we exist to help Christians live in the world, not of the world, by utilizing our convictions in the movies and shows we watch. How to Train Your Dragon 2 is rated PG for some action adventure and some brief, rude, mild-esque humor. So we're going to dive into any convictions you may have that may prevent you from watching this movie, any theological themes present within the film, and wrap it up with my personal thoughts on How to Train Your Dragon 2. Without further ado, let's dive into the Christian Conviction Meter. If you're brand new here, the Christian Conviction Meter is a series of 5 convictions that may distract or hinder your relationship with Jesus. Ultimately, this is a guide, tool, and resource to help you find good movies to watch based on your convictions, because the world is pretty crazy at times. Without further ado, let's dive into our first category. And for the most part, it is very similar to the original How to Train Your Dragon film. Because it deals with dragons, you're getting a lot of fire, lots of explosions. There is a lot more action in this film, both in terms of Viking action, whether it's by spears, swords, axes, some of those things. There even is some like human versus human fighting that does actually occur within this film. On top of that, there's some big broad action of dragons versus dragons. I almost said dinosaurs for some reason. This is not about that. This is about dragons. So there is some really just big scoped action sequences contained within this movie. It is a bit more intense, but not so much that it needs to boost up to a 3 out of 5. This is going to be, once again, a 2 out of 5. Our next category is lust, and obviously, because of the fact that it's an animated movie, there really isn't much here to worry about, but I do want to just let you in on the fact that this movie does have a few jokes about some characters being super attractive. Usually they'll have like slow motion scenes and you'll have them kind of like look at a certain character, particularly one who like has a bigger bicep, and so a girl's kind of checking it out. It's meant to be as a joke, but other than that, like I said, there's nothing to worry about here. It's a 0 out of 5, but I do want to clue you in on some of the humor of the film. Our next 2 categories, though, substances and profanity, just like lust, have nothing to worry about. There is no profanity, there's no substances contained within this film. Both of these are a 0 out of 5. Our last category is intense/horror scenes. This is not a horror movie, which means there is no horror images contained within the movie. But there is, of course, a bit more intensity. This is a much darker story, both in its tonality and also in what does take place. There is a good amount of death within this film, both kind of off to the sides as kind of just random character fatalities and casualties, but there also is a major character's death. Obviously, if you've seen the film, you know who it is, but yeah, it's a pretty emotional and intense sequence because of the nature of what happens, and leading into that moment, it gets pretty intense and kind of scary for some younger viewers. On top of that, there is a lot of topic about hypnosis that is a part of this movie, and so if you are watching it, there is some sequences of that can be pretty disturbing for younger viewers, can be pretty scary. It does elevate the intensity of it, just because of how this villain is kind of wired in what he does. And so those are a few things to keep in mind here. We're going to give this a 2 out of 5, just to be on the safer side here, because like I said, compared to the last one, it is a much more darker, much more heavier story. So our grand total for How to Train Your Dragon 2 is going to be a 4 out of 25. Just like the first one, it is on the lower end of the conviction meter. That being said though, if there are any convictions that you have that may prevent you from watching the film, make sure you act on your convictions because they are God-given. That being said though, let's dive into some theological themes that are present within How to Train Your Dragon 2. And there actually is a little bit more here, although it talks about mainly finding your purpose. Obviously, it comes from a more worldly perspective of saying this is who you are and some of those things, but the biggest thing is Hiccup's character arc is really about finding his purpose. And for us as Christians, what my takeaway was is that, well, we all have a purpose. God has given a purpose to each and every single one of us, which I know for some people that may be like, well, I don't know what that is. To give a broad generalization for everybody, we have two things, two purposes that we live by. The first is to know God for ourselves. Means going to church, that means reading our Bibles, that means spending time with Him in prayer and fasting and just living our lives for Him, which I say that as also a reminder for myself to continue to improve and become more like Christ. So our first is to know God. Our second is to make Him known. That means by sharing the good news of Jesus by how we live, walk, and talk. That means sharing the gospel with a neighbor or a friend, but it also means by how we carry ourselves, how we live our lives, which honestly is, once again, a good reminder even for myself. But how we go about those things, particularly how we make God known, is going to be different for everybody. Maybe for you, it's serving in student ministry. Maybe for you, it's serving as a greeter in your church. Maybe it is doing missions outside of the country. Maybe it's going to Asia or other countries in Europe, right? Maybe it's some of those things. Maybe it's local missions where you live, learn, work, and play. It looks different for each and every single one of us, but we all have a purpose that God has given to us. And so that is something that I found kind of cool and just wanted to impart to you. Hopefully it encourages you. So with that wrapped up, it's time to talk about my thoughts on How to Train Your Dragon 2. And overall, this is a really good movie. It does have a lot of the same charm and magic of the original movie, while going deeper into the relationships of these characters and deeper into expanding the world of How to Train Your Dragon. The animation here is also really, really solid, and the story overall is pretty good. However, it does have a lot more to kind of navigate because of the fact that you have Hiccup and his journey and trying to process through what is next for him in life, but also at the same time, you have him, meeting his mother and, that relationship dynamic. And you also have our villain and his, what he does and the whole looming chaos of that. And also our other side characters, our other friends from Burke. There's a lot to navigate in this film, and it doesn't handle it all the time very, very smoothly. There are a few clunky bits and pieces here, some parts that do kind of feel rushed, so much so that some characters may even feel a little bit sidelined. I'm namely talking about Astrid here. She feels kind of sidelined, especially for what should be a more important character. She's pretty important in the first one. She doesn't feel as important in the sequel. But we are introduced to a few new characters here. Of course, the standout is going to be Cate Blanchett's Volca, who is, of course, Hiccup's mom. Yes, before you say spoilers, it's in the trailer, okay? So it is talked about in the movie. I double checked. Obviously, that comes a whole world of relationship dynamics and some uniqueness to this film. You have that character that's introduced, but you also, of course, have our villain, right? And Drago is pretty good. He's not a phenomenal villain, especially when you take a look at the rest of the villains in DreamWorks. He is decent, but he's not super duper great. Overall, this is an enjoyable follow-up that does capture a lot of the things you want from a How to Train Your Dragon film and elevates some things even with a darker story. It's a deeper, more emotional story, but it does have the same charm, magic, a great score that you expect from the How to Train Your Dragon movies. This is a really good one. I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10. So it's a 4 out of 25 on the conviction meter and 9 out of 10 in our review. Those are my thoughts, so let me know yours down in the comments below. Let's chat all things about the sequel in the comments. And while you're down there, consider hitting that like and subscribe for us. Joining our community here on YouTube helps us send us out into the algorithm, allows us to reach more Christians so they can utilize their convictions to ultimately follow Jesus better. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with us here. Truly appreciate it. It means the absolute world to us. YouTube is recommending a couple videos to you over here, one of which is our review of the How to Train Your Dragon original movie that came out in 2010. Join us over there. We'll see you all in the next one.